Tell me why I died when he said, "I thank you to keep your hands off my wife." Howdy, my loves. Today we're going to be doing a very special book video that includes some of my best friends. One thing that I was really excited to ask all my friends is like, hey, what are your 5-star reads and can I judge you on them? And their answer was yes. I didn't say that last part, but they don't need to know about that. I asked 3 really good friends and who are really good readers. I asked them to provide me with their most recent 5-star reads and I hopped onto Amazon and ordered them. One of them I actually already had, and it is For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. The first friend that I am going to be reading their recommendation is Nick. He's a really good friend of mine and he actually just had me on his podcast called the Howling Wolf Podcast. I'll link it down below. We actually do talk about books. And his most recent podcast was dedicated completely to books. We touched on other things like social media, art, content creation, things like that, but he did a whole podcast of books and I think that was thanks to my influence. I recently got him into Fourth Wing. We both are like constantly talking about it. We are raving about it. And so he told me that a 5-star recommendation that he has is For the Wolf. So I'm very excited to read this and we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Also, if you're keeping up with my 1,000 book challenge, which I really do document on TikTok. Basically, my goal is to have 1,000 books because that's considered a library. I love to have a personal library. This is book number 99 out of 1,000, and I believe I'm currently in the 170s as of how many books I have. Quick summary of For the Wolf. Red is the second-born daughter. She is royalty, but they're very religious, and so there's a custom that if in the royal line a second daughter is born to the same queen, she is sacrificed to the big bad wolf who lives in the Wilderwood, which is like a cursed forest. They've known this her entire life, therefore her mother kind of distanced herself from her, and meanwhile Nev, the oldest daughter, was destined to become queen. Because in the past, bad things have happened if the second daughter has not been given to the Wilderwood. Red, on her birthday, ends up in the woods and she finds a house there, and inside is the wolf. His name is actually Eamon. He has no interest in her. Turns out, according to Eamon, that the second daughter sacrifice is just a lesson of correlation does not equal causation. Like, you know, bad things happen, but it wasn't because they didn't sacrifice anyone. Red actually had a secret that she was keeping, and when she was younger, her and her sister actually went to the Wilderwood. But all of a sudden she has these powers and she accidentally murdered a lot of people at that event. So she tells the wolf, I'm not leaving. I need to stay here because she's worried she's going to kill the people who are in her life. This turns out to be a marriage of convenience, which I think is funny. It's just, I did not expect that. And she learns that the Wilderwood is a little bit more complicated than she thought because there are different things living in there, and Eamon's actually been the person who is helping keep it safe and controlled so it doesn't overtake their society. Good morning, guys. So last time we spoke, I was reading For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, and since then I finished it. So this was Nick's 5-star read and I actually ended up giving it 3 stars. It is a very cool premise, okay? No knocking it to Nick. When he described it to me, I was very intrigued. I did end up giving it 3 stars just because it did have me really bored at some parts. Like, I felt like I was forcing myself to read it rather than wanting to know what happens. And when I wasn't reading it, it was very easy for me to forget the world that I was in and what was going on with the plot, especially since they're in the forest this entire time, and the whole time that they're like going through this forest, it's all the same imagery. Thorns growing and the bushes expanding and the trees stalking them. It's the same thing over and over, and I think that's what got me so bored. It felt very repetitive, especially since the imagery just kept being recycled. The romance was pretty good, and honestly, I was not expecting this to be a marriage of convenience. I do really like that trope. Tell me why I died when he said, I thank you to keep your hands off my wife. Bonus points for that one. I don't know if I'm gonna continue the second one. This is a duology, so like the whole time they were bouncing back and forth between Red and her perspective in the forest, and then also in their kingdom in Valaden to her sister. The whole time that Nev was being played by that stupid priestess, I was like, if there's one thing I've learned from ACOTAR,
It's that priestesses are toxic. It ends on a cliffhanger where we don't know what's going on with Nev. She descended into like a black hole or something. I don't know if I like the writing style enough to continue, but I know that the second book rated higher than this one. So but overall, not a terrible story, but just kind of like meh. Now we are entering the romance era. Now this is brought to you by my friend Cassandra. She is obsessed with this series, and the first book, it's called The Trouble with Flying. I did read the first one. I believe this is the fourth book. She told me that it's not necessary for me to read it in order. They're basically standalones about different couples that are just interconnected, so like I could just jump to this. And this one is actually the sister of the girl in the first book. The first book in the series, I only rated 3 stars. I thought it was okay. It was just kind of like mild. The main character was just a little bit too passive for my taste, but I am excited to read this because there are some tropes in it, according to Cassandra, that I will really like.
Sophie just graduated high school. She's 18 years old. She has no interest in going to post-education. She's an artist and she really wants to make a living off of selling her art. This whole time, she has been developing this online relationship with a guy she calls Lex. Right now, her sister is getting married. She's one of the bridesmaids. So she comes home to be in her sister's wedding. Her sister's husband's groomsman, who's paired up with her for the weekend, his name is Caleb, is incredibly annoying and she finds him very off-putting. It's very obvious to the reader that Caleb is actually Lex.
I've only read like 10 pages and already I'm dying at the fact that this guy, who I'm pretty sure is the love interest, was like chasing her through an arts and crafts store trying to get her to color because she was like coloring on her iPad and he was like, that's not real coloring. And I was like, can you be more annoying? A little bit of a weird start, but I'm excited to read a purely romance book next, something fluffy and cute. It's like every time I read a fantasy, it's like a reward when I get to read just the cutesy little romance book. And this one's really small. It's only 200 something pages, so not that big of a deal. I'm about 75 pages into The Trouble with Falling, and I've been here for like one sitting. I normally do really like a black cat girlfriend, a golden retriever boyfriend, and I think that's what this is going to end up being because Caleb / Lex is super upbeat and really cheerful. It's obviously a mask for his divorced parents, but still, she's just completely grumpy to the point where her sister, who's getting married, literally pulls her aside and is like, get your shit together because this is my day and I'm not gonna let you ruin it. Which, like, I was kind of happy that Sarah did that because the way she's acting about this mysterious event that happened a year ago, like, if Brayden didn't die in some tragic accident, there's no reason she should be this upset over a boy. A man? She's thinking of herself in like the way she was before him and the way she is after him. And those are two different people, like, in her mind. Like, is this not her? Like, are we knowing like depressed, oh my God, what's her name? Is this like depressed Sophie? I'm not that big of a fan of Caleb. He's a little overbearingly pushy. She's just trying to get through her sister's wedding and he's constantly up in her business. Listen, I get it. Like, you know, he really likes her and he's trying to endear himself to her. Like, but at the same time, like, if somebody wants to be left alone, like, don't push it so much. She's totally open to this guy online. Like, she knows that she loves him and she's totally okay with it because she's like, well, I'm never gonna meet him, so it doesn't matter. Which I think is interesting, that she's like admitting it to herself that she knows she loves him and she's like fine with it because he's this like anonymous online person. So I think she's gonna have a full mental breakdown when she finds out that it's the guy that's been harassing her at her sister's weddings. And why did I forget they were in South Africa and there are monkeys roaming around? Like, they joked about monkeys coming in the window and I was like, oh, haha. Like, I thought they were making a joke about, like, you know when you say like, oh, a troll must have been in it, or like a fairy. No, they meant actual monkeys. That's where I'm at. I'm probably gonna read a little bit more, go to sleep, and then I'll update you guys next time. Okay, I know I said I was gonna stop reading to go to sleep. That was a lie. Actually, it wasn't a lie. It's just that I failed at trying to go to sleep. I am 110 pages in. Why is this girl's sister telling her that she's in sex with her husband? Okay, fine, wait till marriage, whatever you want to do. But also, why are you sharing that with your younger sister? Lex asked her to meet up in Rome at this like art con thing so that they could like meet in person, and she's like, no, I wanted to strictly keep this online, and she hurt his feelings. Well, Caleb's feelings, if he even has any. I finished The Trouble with Falling. My sister is actually sick, so I took this to urgent care, so I read a little bit of there, and then I plopped myself on the couch and finished it. So it took me about 2 days. Like, it's a very quick read. I did end up giving this 3 stars. Like, it was cute, it was fine. There were some deep topics, and the thing with Brayden did end up being something tragic. We do find out that he had killed himself. It just felt really abrupt how, like, all of a sudden, like, she was completely fine with risking her emotional well-being to be with Caleb. She said that she went to therapy and counseling, but after all that, she still had some really bad cognitive distortion. I feel like the way she was able to get to a place where she was like, okay, I can like risk loving people, it felt like she had one conversation about it and suddenly she was like cured. I don't know, like, it was fine, it was a cute read, but like not anything spectacular. So 3 stars for this one. The next and final book is provided by my best friend. She recommended Such a Fun Age.
This book stars Amira. Amira is a Black woman and they're living in America, and she's actually a babysitter for a white family. One night, her employer, her house gets vandalized, and so she calls Amira in the middle of the night around 11 p.m. and says, can you please take my baby Briar out of the house so we can deal with this horrible situation? Amira comes, of course, but she's like, Mrs. Chamberlain, I've been out at a party, I've been drinking, I hope you don't mind, and also I'm wearing party clothes. She's like, I don't care, you just need to take her to the grocery store. So Amira takes Briar to the grocery store, and because she's a Black woman with a white toddler, she gets accused of kidnapping while she's just doing her job. The whole thing gets recorded by a guy named Kelly Copeland, and he sends her the video of the cop and the worker harassing her, and he's like, you know, you can like really get him fired, you can sue him, and she's like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. Now, because of that interaction, Alex Chamberlain, the mom, really gets sort of obsessed with Amira. Like, all of a sudden she wants to be friends with her, she wants to know everything about her, and it switches between the perspectives of Amira and Alex. But little do they know that they actually have someone in common, and that is Kelly, who shot the video. Kelly at one point had dated Alex, and now he is dating Amira. So it's a very interesting story. I think it's more about the complexities of like race and intersectionality and class and all these different identities and how that plays out in the workplace especially. Hey guys, so it's been a couple of days. I am still on chapter 2, exactly where I left off. Before I have to go to work, I'm going to attempt to read a bit. I am not as eager to continue just because it's such a heavy topic, but I know that once I get into it, I'm going to be very interested. The next day, and I actually finished last night Such a Fun Age. Now, the reason that I didn't film my reaction last night after I read this is because I was honestly very conflicted. When I finished the book, I just had this feeling, and I think the crux of it is that none of the characters experienced character development, in my opinion. And you know what, that really made me frustrated because I love a good redemption arc, I love a good character arc, and that just didn't happen in this book. And I talked to my best friend about it, who recommended me this book because she gave this 5 stars, and she said, you know what, sometimes people are the way they are, and that's the reality of it. And I'm like, that's very true. It just felt like they were treating Amira as this like thing that they could fight over, especially between Kelly and Alex. They were just kind of tug-of-warring over Amira and who knew what was best for her, despite the fact that she was a 25-year-old adult. Neither of them really learned a lesson. I mean, at the end of it, you find out that Alex actually knew the entire time that Kelly never did anything to her. And that, oh, that made me so freaking pissed off. Like, I'll say one thing about this book evoked emotions in me that the other 2 books did not. Like, it really made me pissed off because at the end of her senior year, Alex found the letters that she had been sending to Kelly, and there was a crack in his locker, and underneath his locker was Robbie's locker. So it was just a mistake, a weird coincidence that her letter fell into Robbie's locker, and she knew it. But she thought to herself, you know what, that narrative doesn't suit me. So I'm gonna make up this story, talk about it for the rest of my life, and I'm going to make everyone think that Kelly Copeland is a bad person, because that just works out better, because my life sucks. When Amira kind of sticks it to her on national television and, you know, Alex is confused, she's like, you humiliated me, you ruined my life. I just knew that she was never gonna take accountability for what she did, and that she was just gonna make up another story about Amira that served her narrative. And Amira kind of stayed very consistent. She didn't really figure out still what she wanted to do in her life, but she did stop working for Mrs. Chamberlain. But she did just move on to nannying another family and, you know, doing other sort of jobs. Like, she did get health insurance, which is good, but she kind of just stayed relatively stagnant. Kelly, on the other hand, they didn't get back together, which I liked. And at the end of it, you know, Amira sees him at a farmer's market with another girl, realizes that Alex was a little bit right about the fact that he does fetishize Black women. I mean, Amira at least stopped and reflected and was like, what should I take away from this experience? But I feel like Alex and Kelly just chalked it up as to this like horrible instance, but they didn't really do any self-reflection because of it. They were just both so angry, infantilizing Amira, and just not realizing that they too played very kind of awful parts in this whole situation. So I was debating between a 3.75 and a 4, and I think I'm gonna give it a 4, because even though it made me mad, it evoked a lot of emotions in me, and it was such a good, interesting anecdote and a great way to showcase the complexity of, you know, racism and class and all this intersectionality between the different identities that people can have and how they interact in a person's day-to-day. These are my best friend's 5-star reads, and while none of them were 5 stars, I do appreciate that each of them were in a different category that I really appreciated. Like, none of the stories were similar, which I thought was interesting. I love that each person chose a different genre for me to consume, which I loved. If this is like the top tier, I feel like it just let me know my friends a little bit more. I got to reside in their mind a little bit and the things that they're passionate about, and I always enjoy that. So I really liked this experiment. If you want me to do similar ones, I was thinking of maybe reading my family's 5-star reads or my coworkers' 5-star reads. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books, or if you can share your 5-star reads, that would be fantastic. I love you guys. I will see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.
Look at her style from the street. Look at her style from the ghetto. This I will never make it big. Me, I tell them say, I will know.